Linda Haslam-Stroud. I'm a registered nurse working in the renal transplant unit at St. Joseph's Healthcare in Hamilton, and I am president of the Ontario Nurses Association. We're here in Sudbury tonight with many different community members and many different unions across the Sudbury and northern area. And what we're talking about is how is it that there's such income inequality between the rich, the 1% in Ontario, and the rest of us, the working people, and the community of the north.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Nichols, as a lot of you people here at the United Steelworkers Union Hall in Sudbury know, but I want to welcome all the people that are on our phone lines as well to this really important evening here in Sudbury. Why are we here tonight? What was the thinking behind having this discussion?
Well, thank you. This issue of income inequality, the unions that are working on it really believe it's the number one, it's the defining issue of our generation. I mean, for 30 years, it's grown each and every year. And as income inequality grows, history teaches us that a number of things happen. One, it breaks down democracy. People lose trust in government, in the ability of government to act and move. It means poorer health outcomes for a whole range of citizens. You know, increased mental health problems, you know, poorer health outcomes, lower life expectancy, and so on. This idea of income inequality growing and growing and growing in leaps and bounds means that some people are doing very, very well, but most people are just barely trying to hang on.
You know, the brother had mentioned that Sam Hammond was off fighting what they did to the teachers, but people don't seem to realize that it's not just the teachers that this was done to. We have education workers. I'm an educational assistant with OPSEU. And the same bill that was passed hit all of us too. And when you look at me, who is raising a family of 3 children off $37,000 a year, which is under the low-income cutoff rate, they wouldn't even consider at the provincial bargaining table to even consider looking at a low-income cutoff rate. So when you have a government that is...
How tough is it for you to make ends meet?
Oh, I live paycheck to paycheck, and I play what I call the bill lottery, which is where I throw my bills up in the air, and the ones that land face up get the full payment, and the rest get a lick and a promise. So that's how it is, though. And I think I've done this job for 24 years, so it's not that I'm starting out and starting new and low income. I think it's a profession. Yet you have a government that comes in and won't look at those kind of things, legislates a contract on you when you can't even sit, I'm president of my local, can't even sit at the bargaining table and look for some kind of gains for your members, be it monetary or non-monetary. And it's not that it's not that they don't care even, it's that they're going at you to bring you down. And I think it's imperative that we ask the governments to explain themselves.
Thank you.
The wealth of the country has doubled in 30 years. But where is it? And when we look at it and look at the research, we see that an ever-increasing smaller group of people control and have access to that money.
Why has that happened?
We think there's 3 fundamental reasons. One, we've attacked the labor rights have been under attack for 30 years. Since 1980, 206 labor laws passed by federal and provincial governments. 199 are takeaways, have diminished the ability of men and women to 1, join a union, and 2, to engage in collective bargaining. And when you attack labor rights, social scientists now can demonstrate that alone, as you attack labor rights, that results in a law or an increase of about 20% in the rise in income inequality. The second reason is we have no industrial strategy in this country. You know, what do you tell a 14, 15-year-old when they ask you, what should I do when I grow up? What should I study? What do you say to them? No one wants to sit down. No governments want to sit down and talk about it. You can't simply pull stuff up out of the ground or take it off the hillsides and ship it out without doing anything with it. Successful economies make stuff. You know what I mean? They make stuff. That's how you get good jobs, and good jobs ensure that income inequality doesn't rise, it decreases. And the third point is that the tax system in this country has ceased to be progressive. It's not the tax system that our parents and that generation built. Since 1980, the tax system in this country rewards financial institutions and banks and some very wealthy individuals. And so in a sense, they're shirking their civic responsibility because they're avoiding the taxes that they should be paying, and that load is borne by people in the middle class and the lower and the poor.
It used to be that, and a good example would be a woman that ended up in a marriage, had a couple of children, and then the marriage broke down and she's alone with the children, and all of a sudden doesn't have enough resources to move her life forward. And it used to be that that woman could get on assistance, get some help, go back to university, get an education and get a job. And I can tell you there are hundreds and hundreds of women who are members of your unions today, working as social workers and working in other professional fields, who that was their start. You can't do that anymore on Ontario Works. There are training dollars, and the training dollars, in my opinion, are wasted because they're very short term. You actually can't go to university on them. There are some college programs that they allow, but it's very, very restrictive. And when people are left living with such a small amount of money that you can't pay your rent and buy healthy food, your whole day gets consumed with it. You know, am I going to lose my apartment? Can I feed my kids? It's hard to think about, oh, and that job interview I'm going on Wednesday.
What do you say to those union members who are on the phone, who are in the hall here tonight, to make them think that, you know what, this income inequality matters whether you're a union member or not?
The unions, including the nurses union, are fighting to raise that bar. This should not be a race to the bottom. James is talking about the concessionary kind of government legislation that's taking place. We at the bargaining table are fighting tooth and nail just to hang on to what we have. And so we're out there, predominantly women in ONA, we're trying to raise that bar so that the women who may not be in unions are able to have better wages, benefits, and working conditions. I take no apology out there. I will not apologize for the fact that we work hard and we have a good pension. And why shouldn't every single member of Ontario have a pension like we have?
It's time for an adult conversation in this country about taxes. Who pays what and why? You know, it's long overdue. For the last 30 years, the tax code has been changed bit by year after year, and it's overwhelmingly favored financial institutions, banks, and the very wealthy. Now, today, 1%, the top 1%, are paying a lower tax rate than the bottom 10% of people that Janet talked about. They're shirking their civic responsibility. And there's $1 trillion sitting in tax havens offshore. Now, if you tax that at 15%, that's $150 billion. A national child care program in Canada, about $12 billion a year. Come on.
We are now feeding in this community 10% of our population regularly at food banks and in food programs. 10%. And the money to feed those people, and by the way, we feed them poorly because the nutritional standards of what we get in food banks is not good. But people like you and I keep donating, keep giving, keep answering. Every time there's a food bank rally, God, we run out and we give because we think we have to give. The mantra of we need to cut corporate taxes because that's what produces jobs. If I hear that one more time, you know, it started.
You're going to explode.
I'm going to explode. It started with President Reagan. We've watched it over and over and over. Tim Hudak's on TV the other night, and guess what we need to do? We need to lower the corporate tax rates. Corporations have built up bigger reserves of money than they've ever had. It's not translated into one job. It never has. We've gone through the same recessions as the rest of the world, even though we have these very low corporate tax rates. The banks pay 10%.
I work in the healthcare sector, and like everybody else, everybody's complaining living week to week on their paycheck. And us in the home care sector, it doesn't get any easier for us as it does for anybody else. We're at $15 an hour for the past 5 years, and the price of fuel goes up bi-weekly, goes down. It plays with our paychecks. The families, where I'm from, we're all hurting.
One of the great Canadian values, fairness, you know, and in the 45, after the Second World War, up till 1980, we introduced great public programs. Old age security, lifted 1 million Canadians out of poverty overnight. We introduced Canada Pension Plan. We introduced Medicare. It was this sense about fairness. And what are we doing in 2012, 2013? We continue to cut the very programs that people, they absolutely need in order to live.
My name is Tammy. I'm with OPSEU Local 676. I'm the president of the local that represents Community Living Greater Sudbury. We're developmental service workers, and we're currently in bargaining right now as well. And we did a rally the other day, and we actually had people from the community drive by and tell us to go back to work. We should be lucky that we have a job. It's unfortunate that most of our workers are part-time workers that work 2 or 3 jobs just to provide for our own families. We look after the most vulnerable people in our population, and we can't look after our own families because we don't make enough money. And we get people from the public coming and telling us, go back to work, you have a job. We do, but we need more money, and all we want is a fair contract, and the government is doing the same thing to us that they're doing to the teachers and everybody else.
And that speaks so clearly to that, you know, so somebody who hasn't got a job is saying, geez, you're so lucky. They have no idea how much you get paid, but you're so lucky to have a job. I don't even have one. So I'll be mad at you instead of understanding this big picture, right?
We have no pension. We have no benefits. We can't provide our kids with cough syrup when they're sick. We don't have the money for it.
It's not hard to see how we can get pitted one against the other and say, well, you know, you don't need any more because we need more. And here we all are all fighting for the one cookie. It was the Occupy movement's analogy that they talked about. The plate has 12 cookies on it, and we get one, and we fight over it with each other, and we fight for the crumbs, and we beg for more, and the 11 cookies go off to the 1% without any conversation or the rest of it, right? While we're sitting back here. It's not the one cookie we need to fight over. It's the 11 that just left the room.
Wow.
We all need to understand that income inequality is not acceptable, and we need to all be out there talking to each other, no matter what union we may represent, no matter whether we're even represented by a union, to talk about how income inequality is not fair, and the governments need to put that very, very high on the agenda and start talking to the people of Ontario.
So tonight, the 7 or 8 unions that we've been working together on, we're going to stand with Janet Gasparini and the Social Planning Council in her fight to protect the rollbacks that this government's tried to impose on the most vulnerable in our society when they cut about $130 or $40 million out of this budget for the most vulnerable in our society. Janet's been leading that fight with others across the Ontario, and tonight we want to pledge our support. The second thing very quickly is we have to be assertive. We have to talk about who we are and what we believe. And the reason it's not hard to do because the facts are on our side. Fair taxation, an industrial strategy, and labor rights are human rights. The facts are on our side. We have to assert it. And the last point I want to make is that I encourage you, with the support of the other leadership, to join our All Together Now campaign. Join the conversation. There's many Canadians, thousands of Canadians that have joined over the last number of months. They're not all unionists. There are many people from all walks of life who share the values that we've talked about tonight. So join that conversation.